Hello and welcome to your show 31 Minutes. This is Hussien Elmotaz and Sherihan Elazzazy from AUCTV. Hello Sherihan.
Hello Hussien. In this episode we'll present a series of reports about what is taking place in AUC, and also we will have an exclusive interview with the chairman of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Richard Bartlett.
AUC Old Campus has been renovated and opened up with more greenery, a new cultural hub, and a schedule full of cultural activities. More about this in the upcoming report with Layla Umara.
AUC's Tahrir building has always been a special place since it was built in the 1870s. It has a unique location in the heart of Cairo, overlooking the Tahrir Square. In the celebration of its centennial, the AUC Tahrir campus has been renovated by funds provided by Sawir's Foundation for Social Development.
It should be a cultural center for the younger generation where they can come play music, art, theater, movies, cinema, galleries, everything, and it should have a constant program, because when we were kids we used to come to Earth Hall for the cinema.
The Tahrir Cultural Center has been launched to enrich the cultural scene for the Egyptian community. It includes multiple exhibitions such as Bint al-Nil, Durya Shafiq, and When Dreams Call for Silence, among many others. The Hill House will continue to have academic lectures and classes. As for all the other buildings, they are part of the Tahrir Culture Center. Parts of the center are still under construction, including a large restaurant.
This is phase one of the project, which entails the 6 galleries that I'm sure you've seen and the landscape. There are still 2 more phases that are going to be underway soon. The first one entails the cafeteria, which is currently demolished downstairs. It's going to be brought back to life. So when we're designing a cultural center, we don't just design a cultural center. Inside the cultural center, we have to design cafeterias to work for the people you're getting for the events. You have to have a restaurant for your visitors. You have to have bathrooms that can withstand all the traffic you have.
Planned events with all the required details are already published on AUC's website for the public to engage in the activities and attend all the events. AUC has been an integral part of the Egyptian community for the past 100 years and will continue to spread culture in all forms for everyone. Layla Umara, AUCTV.
The Caravan has been carrying the voice of AUC students for almost 100 years now. As part of the centennial celebration, an exhibition has been opened in the Journalism and Mass Communication Department. Our correspondent Passant El Gayar has more.
Celebration of AUC's centennial, the Caravan exhibition is being held where cover pages of more than 90 years are displayed.
The past is whatever the records and the memories agree upon. The Rare Books and Special Collections Library has therefore reanimated AUC's past today. It has reanimated for us and reunited us in this space where we are engaged in a collective memory about the Caravan.
The Caravan is a student-run newspaper that has been carrying the voice of the AUC community, and its roots go back to the 1920s.
Well, the challenges that we face are really, it has to do with the environment that students graduate into. Freedom of speech, access to information, freedom of access to information, as well the ability to be able to work on stories independently without outside pressure and so on. So these are some of the things that affect us. So for example, immediately after the January 25th uprising, 2011, the following year we had huge amounts of students applying to enlist in the journalism program and to work in the Caravan, because it was suddenly, journalism became popular, social media became popular. People were looking at it as, okay, this is what brought down an entire government and so on, and created this kind of socio-political change that we saw in the early part of this decade.
The Caravan has been the first step in the career path of many successful journalists.
ده المكان اللي انا اكتشفت فيه ان انا عايزه اكون صحفيه. طبعا مش نفس المكان، احنا كنا اوضه صغيره تحت الارض في الجريك كامبس. ده كان مكاننا اللي كنا بنحبه وبنحس ان ده بيتنا، بنقضي فيه ساعات اطول كتير من اللي بنقضيها في الجامعه او في بيوتنا.
A journalist on the Caravan, some people, you know, students definitely, they go to parties and they go to trips and they do a lot of different things, but as a journalist on the Caravan, when you attend a party, you then go and report on the party. When you go on a trip, you then go and report on the trip. The Caravan is part of every activity you do in the university, and therefore it becomes your university experience.
It's clear that changes happen in the Caravan throughout the years, but the only thing that's constant is the production night.
We used to enter AUC every morning on Wednesday and spend the night in the Caravan, going to classes on Thursday and then go back to Caravan to finish the issue and send it to the press by end of the day.
Major events in Egypt and AUC are documented on the pages of the Caravan. The fact of being the oldest university newspaper in Egypt, along with students' passion throughout the publication process, qualifies AUC's Caravan to compete internationally. This is Basant El-Gayor, AUCTV.
In the last 10 years, AUC has focused on collaborating with world top universities to enhance the educational experience for students. More in the upcoming report.
AUC celebrated a century of leadership as Egypt's global university. The university has a very ambitious strategic plan in all aspects of education. Some of them are introducing educational collaborative programs and international partnerships with world top universities.
Excellency in education is part of the AUC experience, for example, for students, and a part of it by retaining a high caliber and quality faculty, and to improve our internationalization, international students, to improve partnerships with Ivy League universities, and also to do some sort of continuous internship in either governmental or non-governmental entities during the student's life as a whole.
International partnerships display the essential role that AUC plays in the region, as well as the inherent value that it offers to institutions all over the world.
I think apart from the direct benefit of attracting more international students and sending our students on study abroad, partnerships and student exchanges, I believe, helps with the visibility of AUC around the world, helps position AUC as the global university in Egypt, helps with accreditation, and basically we are the only university in Egypt at the time being who would promote for internationalization of its students and for more globalization of its campus.
AUC provides many opportunities for students to study abroad to expose them to international educational experience valuable for both personal growth and career prospects.
I just came back from my semester in Tübingen around 2 weeks ago, and I learned a lot. And definitely, if I have the chance to go back, I will do it.
Academically and socially, I gained a lot from my study abroad experience in Tübingen, and it was really a great experience for me.
I do recommend everyone to, like all students, whether undergrad or grad, to actually go on experiences abroad through AUC. It was a great experience, and also it really adds a lot to you as a person and as a researcher and as a professional as well. But at the same time, I really think that AUC really needs to work more on orienting students who are going abroad.
AUC has hosted an information session held by the Associate Coordinator of JCU University in Rome, dedicated to students who are traveling for a semester abroad over there.
One of the most important things to consider when you apply to study abroad is the academics. Check the faculty. Where are they from? from? What are their, like, do they have PhDs? What's their majors? What's their background? It's really important because they will be your life coach.
In the efforts of enhancing the educational experience in AUC, the university collaborated with 6 top Chinese universities to provide students with more exchange programs in the future. Sherihan Elazzazy, AUCTV News. AUC hosted a panel discussion for graduate students from different universities to discuss their studies on literature on the US and the Arab world. More details in the upcoming report.
Under the title of Literature of the Americas and the Arab World, AUC's Department of English and Comparative Literature has hosted its annual International Graduate Student Conference in AUC Tahrir Campus. The main aim of the conference is to bridge the gap between Americas and the Arab world by discussing papers that tackle various issues such as translation, literature, migration, and even food.
And I think the conference would be very useful because it contributes to cutting-edge knowledge in the Middle East. It's on a topic that is of relevance in the Middle East and the US, and I think that a lot of international students will find very interesting. It's also, papers are delivered in Arabic and in English, and students are presenting on fresh and new topics. So this will be of interest to foreign students.
In the conference, scholars and graduate students from different Egyptian and Middle East universities were able to share their papers with their counterparts. One of the interesting topics that have been discussed is food. Nada Ziada from Alexandria University has presented that food can bridge the gap between two disparate worlds in the Arab American fiction.
الحقيقة دورت الأول كتير، يعني هو توبيك الأكل ده طلع بعد شوية ريسيرش. أنا دورت في الأول كتير، كان في كذا فكرة تانية، وبعد كده مع القراية قريت كذا حاجة، فطلعت بفكرة الفود دي في الآخر، يعني لقيتها common في كذا literary work يعني.
Magical realism was one of the issues that has been tackled in the conference. Philip Raad from American University of Beirut has lectured his own literature perspective inspired by Huda Barakat's book, The Kingdom of the Earth.
In magical realism theory, there's this idea that reality is shown to be either dual or that it's being perceived in two different ways. So what we have is Makandal. He has led this revolt in colonial French Haiti, and he has been captured, and he's on he's set to be executed. And what happens is the French colonial forces see him as being executed.
It has been notable in the conference that some of AUC international students were able to present their papers in Arabic with support and guidance of AUC Center of Arabic Study Abroad, CASA.
جاء مع هذين التغيرين تغيران آخران في الذهنية الدولية. أولاً الانتقال من مقاومة الاستعمار غير المتحدة إلى المقاومية المتفائلة مثلها الرئيس جمال عبد الناصر. وثانياً الانتقال من الأمل الجماعي المحبط الناصري إلى النزعة الفردية الرأسمالية.
Alejandra were able to present her paper about post-revolutionary politics through literature with complete Arabic. She admires that the way she has presented in Arabic is a summary of CAS's efforts that transformed her to an Arabic fluent speaker. Bringing international students to AUC is not only about academic programs offering, but also knowing their interest is a very important aspect. From AUCTV, Elmotaz. Sustainable development, particularly environmental sustainability, is a central principle of the university's mission. More about how AUC is supporting environmental protection in the coming report with Maha.
For many years, AUC worked to uncover better solutions to help manage a wide range of environmental problems and challenges facing our world today. Established in 2011, the Office of Sustainability is responsible for addressing AUC's environmental challenges, including climate change, resource shortage, pollution, and waste management.
AUC right now has 10 chilled water dispensers on campus.
and we're in the midst of ordering more. So we're trying to encourage reuse and decreasing the use of plastic bottles on campus with the drinking water from these dispensers. We have 55 sorting stations across campus, and they comprise of cans, plastic, and trash. And all of that waste, which AUC then sells to companies around Egypt, and then we use that money to move money back into our sustainability initiatives on campus.
Students also feel the responsibility to change their own mindset and behavior to meet the same goal. The Gaia movement is an example of an eco-friendly student-run organization.
We reached out to the Office of Sustainability on campus and to RISE, which is the Research Institute for a Sustainable Environment. But what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve is very different than what they're trying to do. And when we talked to them and we talked to RISE, they said that their main issue was reaching out to students. So what we're trying to do is to bridge the gap between what they're doing and what the students are doing and consuming and all of that.
Reports about sustainability are published on the university's website, but around campus there are still some practices that aren't really sustainable and still on the way to be changed.
What I don't understand is why we have all of these water dispensers that are obviously very clean and all of this effort to get us to drink water in a sustainable way, and why people are still buying bottled. I don't know, it's 2019, why are we still doing this?
We're also working with the different tech teams on campus to help create a transportation app that will be a part of the AUC mobile app as a way to encourage carpooling between people who aren't necessarily friends or know that they're in the same areas to come to campus.
AUC is going to implement a new bike sharing service where new bike stations will be added outside of campus in the New Cairo area to encourage people to use bikes and spread its impact to the surrounding community. Maha, Elrayes, AUCTV, New Cairo Campus.
After the break, we will have our interview with the Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Mr. Richard Bartlett.
We are in a continuous celebration of AUC Centennial. On this occasion, we are having a very special guest and one of the major decision makers in AUC's administration, Mr. Richard Bartlett, Chairman of AUC's Board of Trustees and the son of AUC's fourth President Thomas Bartlett.
Welcome, Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure to be with us here in AUCTV today.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let me start by asking about the Centennial. We witnessed your participation in the Centennial celebration. So tell us more about this occasion.
I hope you were there.
Yeah,
you were there. I thought it was a wonderful gathering of AUC through the ages. I mean, it was spectacularly moving to see people who've been part of AUC over the years there were people there who had been affiliated with AUC 50 and 60 years ago, coming back to celebrate. And it gave one a taste of what it means to be a part of a intellectual family, and it was a wonderful thing to see.
Mr. Bartlett, can you please reflect on the performance of AUC in the last decade?
In the last decade?
Yeah.
Well, I think AUC in the last decade has obviously faced all kinds of challenges, and I think come through it pretty well. I mean, given when you think about it, there have been two revolutions. We've moved to a new campus, and there's been a devaluation of the currency by over 50%. And yet AUC, through all of that, has remained solid. We've remained operational. We've continued to educate good students. So frankly, I think the community around us is getting much bigger. And so I think the hardest parts of coming to a new home, particularly exacerbated by all the challenges that then came up, is largely behind us. And so I think the last decade has been hard, but it has made us stronger.
So building on what you've said, what are the achievements that AUC is planning to accomplish through the coming 10 years, for example?
The coming 10 years. Well, frankly, while this may sound like a non-answer, first and foremost, we have to focus on excellence. I mean, there's no question that AUC is never going to make as much difference in Egypt by educating large numbers. We have to educate leaders. And so to do that, we need to be, without question, the best institution in Egypt for developing the entire person. And that takes resources. And so we are very much going to have to keep focusing on all of the things that produce excellence. And those are a bunch of little things, but you have to do them well. And so there's that. We're very much focused on the whole affordability issue, because that is a real issue. Families are, education is not cheap. But I assume you've heard I think it was Mark Twain who said, "You think education is expensive? Try ignorance." I don't remember who said that, but I think it was Mark Twain. Anyway, but it is expensive. And so we need to increase our scholarship availability by a lot. And we're working on that because we very much want to be less a university that is essentially educating people from Cairo. We want to be educating people from Egypt. And it's a big country. So we want to be able to offer scholarships to bring people from all parts of Egypt. I think we have a real push going on in what I'll call the co-curricular aspects of AUC and the cultural aspects of AUC. So drama, student clubs, athletics, art, frankly, all the things that make a person a well-rounded person and build Egyptian culture.
So, Mr. Bartlett, usually students ask who are the Board of Trustees and what they do and what are their main roles in the decision-making process. So would you please elaborate for the students what exactly the Board of Trustees do?
I would love to do that. So I think one of the things that is challenging in describing what we do in Egypt is because we are an unusual university for Egypt. We are, I think, the only, perhaps, truly private, not-for-profit academic institution. But what that means is it isn't owned by anybody. Well, it's technically owned. It's owned by the trustees, but the trustees are not allowed to have anything from it. In other words, we don't get. We aren't investors in it. We're not allowed to make a profit. We don't make a profit. And so a board of trustees, their role is to worry about the long-range planning and sustainability of the university. And so you bring together people who have a whole lot of different interests, different skills. You want them to be obviously capable people of a wide range of skills, because running a university is requires a lot of different skills. So you want you want people with legal expertise, you want people with financial expertise, you want people with academic expertise. But critically, what's important to them is they're worrying about the long-term sustainability of the university. It's something that, in some senses, a phrase we sometimes use is what's called intergenerational equity. We need to be balancing what we're doing today for our students with what we want to be able to do in the future. There are a lot of decisions we could make that would make AUC more fun, cheaper, easier, more enjoyable today that would compromise the long term. And it's really the trustees who have no interest, no financial interest in the institution, whose job it is to be overseeing the administration's decision-making on those kinds of issues. We try not to be involved in the daily operations at all. It's very much, you are both talking to and hearing from the administration. You're not trying to run the university. And so we're fortunate to have a very strong administrative team. We have a very strong president. And so our job, as somebody once said, a president of a very fine institution back home, the Board of Trustees should have their head in the tent, but their fingers out of the tent. In other words, we should be nose under the tent, but fingers out of the tent. So it's very much an oversight role, but not a management role.
So is there a direct communication line between the students and the Board of Trustees?
The answer is there is, but there ought to be more. And we talked about that during our meetings. We have there's a student affairs committee of the board, and the chair of that is an AUC alumnus, Rana Kalyubi, a woman, and she is the chair of the Student Affairs Committee, and their role is to oversee interactions with the students, but not just communications-wise, but to be worrying about, are we providing the right kind of overall student experience? We talked about it at the board meeting the other day, and I think she is going to be instituting a more kind of regular communication, because we do want to hear from the students. We can't promise that we'll always follow their request, but I think the communication, because I will say one of the real challenges we face is because we are unusual, I think people draw a lot of analogies that are not appropriate. So the concept that we're not for profit. People imagine that if we charge more, that somehow the trustees will actually make money somehow in this process. That isn't how it works. The more that we charge, the more we have to spend on our students. Everything that we have, all of our resources, the only place that can go is back into the university for either the students, for research, for all of the objectives that we follow.
So since Sherihan have mentioned the communication with students, and you have building on what you have said before about balancing between the financials and the tuition fees, how are you going to deal with the concerns, some students' concerns towards the potential increase or potential tuition increase in the fees?
It answers itself in the sense that we are, one of the hard decisions we're going to have to make is trying to figure out, given what's happened in Egypt, obviously there is inflation, and that's a very real thing, and that does two things. It makes it harder for Egyptians to afford things, but it also makes it more expensive to run the university. And so it is exactly that kind of a trade-off, or those kinds of issues that we're going to have to balance. Our objective will be to keep any increase that we have to the minimum that we think we can charge, consistent with our other objectives. Of course we could charge less, and we would be a weaker institution 10 years from now. And so that's a perfect example of the kind of trade-offs that the trustees have to make. I should point out, I'm sure you've heard this before, but the cost of running AUC is not fully covered by tuition. And so there are funds, and so whatever it is that tuition is, at least the students should be, I don't know if they're pleased to hear, but be aware that their education costs even more. And so that's, in that sense, it's a very good value. And our objective is to make sure it's a good value. But value doesn't necessarily mean cheap. It means a good value.
So we've learned that the university conducted a $100 million campaign, and you've already raised about 70% of this target.
Yes.
So how this money will be allocated?
Well, it'll be going along the lines of the sorts of objectives that I described. So it'll go into scholarships, it will go into strengthening the performing arts and the art side, it'll go into supporting more research, it'll be going into supporting quality professors. It will be, unlike our last capital campaign, which was the purpose of which was the campus, this will be less about structures. It'll be more about programs. Programs and affordability. My wife and I just made a gift to the campaign, and we targeted faculty research. We thought it was really important that AUC, in order to maintain its really high quality faculty, AUC needs to be a place where the faculty who are both inclined and capable of high quality research, because there will be some who prefer to exclusively teach, but those who can and want to, AUC should be supporting, although the gift that we made emphasizes research that involves undergraduates. So trying to figure out how to blend the faculty's desires to research with our desires to make sure the students get an experience was what our gift was trying to target.
So are you planning to reserve some of these funds? So you have mentioned the research and the activities. Are you planning to reserve some of these funds to expanding or opening new branches for locally, originally for AUC?
It would surprise me if we would ever, well, it would surprise me if we would ever in my lifetime open a new campus. I think we still have space that we can grow here. And I mean, candidly, we are focused on remaining focused on a relatively clear set of objectives, and just getting bigger is really not one of those objectives. We're about excellence, not size.
Yes.
So are you planning to establish more schools and majors, for example, like medicine or pharmacy, as AUC has always been known only for social science majors or schools?
I mean, we're talking about those sorts of things. Again, I suspect, although those kinds of academic plans, they really mostly arise from the campus to us. In other words, it's really not, it really isn't, that's the kind of thing that really should emanate from the faculty's desires and the administration's plans. So in that sense, the board will more often be reactive than telling people what to go do, because that isn't, so I'm certainly not foreclosing it. I think there are areas that I could imagine us trying to emphasize, but we'll really be awaiting things coming from campus to us.
So as we all know, one of AUC's main goals is to increase the rate of international students coming to study here in AUC in Cairo. So how the Board of Trustees are going to work on such an issue and to increase and to get back the rate that we have used to do so?
Yeah. And I should have mentioned, that's one of our real priorities for the next, frankly, shorter than a decade, and we would like to be making real progress in the next kind of year or two. We very much want to bring back international students, and we want to make sure we maintain as international a faculty as we can, because I really do think that part of the experience of an AUC education is to be exposed to professors from all around the world and students from all around the world. It is a challenge, but we have a whole program to be, we're working with the State Department, we're working to get back various sources of funding that have brought students here in the past, fellowships of all kinds. President Richard is very much focused on that issue, and it's an area that he knows a lot about.
So, what is the future of AUC graduates?
Great.
Will they bring the East and West together?
Well, let me say this. You know, Egypt is going through all kinds of challenges. It's hard to think of a successful future for Egypt in which education is not critical. And so I think everybody in Egypt agrees that education is critical. AUC wants to be providing the best education in Egypt, and therefore we're expecting that we're producing people who are going to make a difference. And candidly, if you guys don't make a difference, we'll be disappointed, and we'll be back. We'll be back. And so we have, it's interesting. I was at when we celebrated our launch. I sat with 3 ministers who, one had been a former professor here and 2 were graduates, and it was a very exciting feeling that we're trying to, we're trying to produce leaders in Egypt. And I think we have, and I think we are right now producing them, and I hope the 2 of you are 2 of them.
We hope so.
Inshallah, right.
Inshallah. So, Mr. Bartlett, you have met with Egypt's leadership. So I want to know what were the outcomes of such a meeting, and how do you see such a meeting with the Egypt president specifically?
Yeah, the Board of Trustees spent about an hour with the president today, and it was obviously a very special occasion to be celebrating our celebration with him. I think it was a very cordial and encouraging conversation, in the sense that I think he clearly values what we do. I think he'd like to see us do more of it. I think he also, the university has very good relationships with the government of Egypt, and so we would like to do more. I think one of the things we'll be trying to do is to find more ways to collaborate with other universities in Egypt, because AUC wants to be a leader in Egyptian education broadly, not just for its students. And so I think there will be, I'm hopeful that there will be more forms of collaboration between both AUC students and AUC faculty and other universities.
And you visited the Saqqara tomb and the Grand Egyptian Museum. Right. How was your visit?
It was great, and it was nice to see something that was 4,500 years old, because it makes AUC seem young, right? We'd spent all weekend thinking of how old we were, and here was something that made us feel, it makes you realize why Egypt is such an incredible place, because the idea that they're finding things that are 4,500 years old is part of what makes the country so inspirational.
Thank you, Dr. Bartlett, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are very lucky to be witnessing the AUC 100 years, or the centennial of AUC. And for this, we are going to have more AUC important stakeholders. Stay tuned for the upcoming episode. This was Sherihan and Elazzazy and Hussien Umara from AUCTV.